Meseches Yevamos Daf Samach Gimel is a lengthy daf which is almost completely agadata. It discusses many aspects of personal advice and has a very large focus on the mitzvah of Puravu as well as marriage advice, how important it is to be married and how important it is to have a good wife and the struggles that would affect someone who has a challenging wife. So let us begin the Gemara. It begins with 7 statements of Rav Elazar. The Gemara gives a siman for them first in advance. The siman is Isha v'karka ezer zois shtei habrechos talgare and pachse. That is the wife, the land, the ezer, the helper, zos, this, the 2 brechos, not brachos but brechos, the tagar, the merchant, and lo. So what are these 7 things? So the first one, Rav Elazar says, is that anybody who is not married is not an Adam. He's not called an Adam, like it says Zachar and Nekeva Baram Ve'ikras Shemam Adam. Only when it was a man and female together, can HaKadosh Baruch Hu call them Adam. Second statement is anybody who doesn't have karka, anybody who doesn't own land is not called an Adam, is not called a person. As it says, Shemayim Lashem Va'aretz Nasan Levnei Adam. So somebody who doesn't have Aretz must not be Adam. Third statement, what does it mean when Chava is called Ezer Kenegdo? Ezer means a helper, Kenegdo means opposed to him. So is a man's wife supposed to be a helper or opposed? So Rav Elazar says it depends. If he's a Zoche, if he has proper Zochusim, if he merits it, so then she will help him. Otherwise she'll be opposed to him. And there's another source for the same limud, and that's the word Kenegdo is really spelled Kenagdo without a yud, but we read it Kenegdo, which would be the proper reading with a yud. So Kenagdo means whipping. So it really says that the woman is supposed to whip him, but we read it as kenegdo so that she corresponds to him, meaning that she goes along with him. So again, if he's zoche, then she will go along with him. If he's not zoche, she'll whip him. Whip doesn't mean, literally it just means she'll be very contentious. So Gemara quotes a story that happened related to that. The Gemara says that Rav Yossi met Eliyahu Navi and he said to him, the Torah calls a wife an ezer, a helper. How does one's wife help him? So Eliyahu Navi said, what do you mean? If you bring home wheat, what are you going to do? Eat just the wheat? You can bring home flax. Are you going to wear the flax? No, the wheat has to be made into bread, and the flax has to be made into clothing. So men can have broad plans and schemes, but they're very not skilled at putting it in the actual fruition and turning it into something useful. The women have the practicality to take things and move it from its inception to actually being useful, such as the birth of a child. Now, Eliyahu Navi concluded that she is Meir Einav, she illuminates his eyes, Mamido Araglov, she places him on his feet, she makes things actually happen. Now, back to Rav Elazar, his fourth thing is, he says, what does it mean when it says, Zosapam Etzami Etzami Ubasam Yipsari? Adam said about Chava that this time she is the bone of my bones, the flesh of my flesh. What did it mean this time? So the Gemara says that he was attempted to marry all the other animals that exist in the world, and he found that none of them were properly fitting for him except for Chava. This time he said, this is my proper one. Now the Achronim explain that this is a remez. It's not meant to be taken literally, but it is to show the special fitting nature of man and wife. Now, Rav Elazar's fifth thing is he said, Avram Avinu was told, all the families of the earth will be nivruchu. So simple meaning is that means that they will be blessed through you. Gemara has a drasha that it's from the word lahavrich, meaning to graft, that there will be 2 grafts from the nations of the world into Avram's family. That refers to Rus, who came from Moab, and Naamal came from Ammon. They were called blessings, and they were because they helped out. Rus gave birth to a royalty, to David HaMelech, and Naamah was the mother of Rechavam, who was the father of other righteous kings. Now, the phrase Kol Mishpachos Adama teaches even the families who are in the earth, meaning the cave dwellers, they are blessed only because of Klal Yisrael, even though they may have they may not have any interaction. Also, there's another pasuk that says, "V'kol goyei haaretz v'nivruchu v'kol goyei haaretz." All the nations of the world, of the land, shall be blessed by Avram. That means even the ships that travel from Galia to Spain, simply it means from Italy to Spain, who may have no interaction with Israel, are also blessed only by Israel. Now Rav Elazar's sixth statement that he says that all types of professions will stop their work. Everybody will leave their profession. They will all become farmers. Like it says, V'yordu me'oni yoseim kol tovsei mashod melachim kol chayvel hayam el ha'aretz ya'amoidu. They will all leave the boats. All those who row, they sail on the sea, they'll all stand upon the ground, meaning they'll all become farmers. And Rav Elazar said, farming is the lowest of all relationships, of all activities. Like it says, Yordu. They will descend from the boats and go stand on the ground. Now, the Gemara moves into a discussion of personal finances and how one can possibly make the best parnasa. And this is related to what Rav Elazar said about farming being a very difficult livelihood. The Gemara says a few things about that. The Gemara says that Rav Elazar saw a piece of land that was plowed improperly. It was plowed widthwise instead of lengthwise, and it was growing a cabbage. And Rav Elazar said, even if you had been plowed correctly, he said to the field, even if you had been plowed correctly, you would still not be a good way to earn parnasa. Commerce, buying and selling, is a better parnasa than farming. Now, similarly, it happened with Rav. Rav once went into a field and passed between two fields of grain, and they were waving in the breeze, rustling against each other. And Rav said to them, "You can wave at each other, that's fine, but commerce and business is still a better parnasa than farming." Now, the Gemara said that Rava also said if someone has 100 zuz, so if he invested them in business deals, he'll eat meat and wine. If he invested them in farming, he'll have to eat unripe sprouts and salt, meaning he won't have too much and not be able to afford it too much. Not only that, he said, but the land will lay on him, meaning he'll have to lie on the earth. He won't have a bed to sleep on, and it'll get him into court. He'll end up in fights about the land that he's owning and that he's working. Now, more about Parnasa. Rav Papa says you should plant grain for what you need. You shouldn't buy it from the market. It seems to indicate that he appreciated farming, but he said you should plant for your own needs as opposed to needing to buy what you need. And even if it doesn't save you any money, it's not any cheaper, but still there's a bracha in what you planted yourself and what you harvested yourself rather than what you buy from others. Next, the Gemara says you should sell what you have and to avoid becoming poor. Sell the money that you have and try to earn a living from it. Now, you should sell your furnishings, such as your rugs and your carpets, but don't sell your clothing. Clothing is something somebody needs, and you never know when you're going to be able to find one that's worthwhile. Now, if you have problems in the house, so if you have a small hole, plug it up right away. Don't take it off the entire section and re-brick it. Don't get into more construction than you need to. If you did take it off to re-brick just that section. Don't knock down the entire wall, because you want to avoid construction as much as you can, because that's an expense that keeps on expending. Now, you should jump at an opportunity to buy land, because that's good, but be very careful when you get married. Go slowly and think about it carefully. You should go down to marry. You should marry a woman who is on a level lower than you on the class society, so that she shouldn't despise you. But when you're looking for a trusted advisor, you should reach for somebody who is a level above you, so that you can emulate his level and his behavior. Now, the Gemara had spoken about how Klal Yisrael caused the blessings to the world. The Gemara now shows that Klal Yisrael also caused punishment to the world. Ravina says, Paranas, punishment comes to the world because of Yisrael, like it says, I eliminated their nations, their towers have become ruined, I destroyed their streets. And right after that it says, Amarti achtiri oisi tikkun musar, and I said, fear me and take a lesson from that, referring to Yisrael. So for Yisrael to learn the lesson, these calamities and disaster had happened to the rest of the world. Now, the Gemara goes back to the topic of marriage, and now the Gemara talks about people who have a bad wife. That is an objectively difficult woman, not somebody doesn't get along with because of his own bad midos. The Gemara says that Rav was leaving Rav Chia. Rav Chia said to him, "May HaKadosh Baruch Hu spare you from the thing which is worse than death itself." Rav said, "Worse than death, what could that be?" And he found the pasuk in Koheles, where it says, "Umaytani mar mimavas as isha," that a bad woman, is worse than death itself, more bitter than death. The Gemara says that Rav nevertheless did have a bad wife, and she would start up with him all the time, and whenever he asked her what, she still fed him, but whenever he asked for lentils, she would give him peas, and he asked for peas, she would give him lentils. Whatever he wanted, she would try to give him the opposite, just to give him a hard time. So when Rav's son was Chia, when he grew up and he would relay the message from his father to his mother, he saw what was happening, so he switched it. And that way, if Rav wanted one thing, he said the opposite, so the Rav would get what he wanted. So Rav said to him, "Oh, look, your mother is improving. She's giving me what I wanted." So Chia said, "No, it was actually me. It was me who switched it, but she's still doing the same thing." So Rav said, "That's very smart of you," and that's the saying that people say that your child will teach you new things, but still you shouldn't do it, because it does say Limdu Lashonam Daber Sheker Ha'avei. A person should avoid training himself to speak falsehood. So even though it's accomplishing the goal, but you should not say things which are not true. Then the Gemara discusses something related about Chia and Rav. The Gemara says that Chia's wife, this is not Chia, Rav's son, but Rab Chia, who is a Rebbe of Rav. Rav Chia's wife gave him a hard time, but still, Rav Chia, whenever he found something nice in the marketplace, he would bring it, wrap it up in a nice scarf, and he would bring it to her. So Rav said, if she aggravates you so much, why do you go and buy her things? So he said, we have to have gratitude to our wives. It's enough that they raise our children and that they save us from Avera. That's enough to earn our affection and our gratitude. Now, the Gemara says that Rav Yehuda read to his son Rav Yitzchak the pasuk, "Umoitzi ani es mar mimaves, umoitzi ani mar mimaves asisha." I found a woman to be more bitter than death itself. So Rav Yitzchak asked his father, "Who's an example?" He said, "Your mother, my wife. Your mother is an example of that." The Gemara says, but we have an opposite thing that Rav Yehuda also taught Rav Yitzchak, his son, where he said that a man only finds peace and content and pleasure with his first wife. Like it says, you should be blessed and rejoice with the wife of your youth. And Rav Yitzchak said, who's an example of that good wife? So he said, your mother. So which is it? Did he have a good wife or a bad wife? So the Gemara says she was very easy to anger, but she calmed down quickly, and therefore she was bad in her violent outbursts, but she was good most of the time because she restored her temperament quickly. Now, the Gemara says, how do you define a bad wife? What is meant by that? So the Gemara says that Abaye said she sets a table to feed him, but she curses him while he eats. Rava said she sets the table and she doesn't sit with him. She turns her back and leaves. Now, in both cases, she does cook for him, but she leaves it at that, and she uses what she gives him as an opportunity to abuse him. Now, there are some Acharonim who explain that she cooks for him in order to have that opportunity to abuse him. If she would not cook for him, then she wouldn't be so bad. Now, the Gemara says that Rav Chia was grateful to his wife, we said before, because she spared him from Aveira. The Gemara says that Rav Chama Bar Chanina said something similar. He said, when somebody takes a wife, his Aveiros are plugged up, from the word mispakikin, plugged. Like it says, Matzah Isha Matzah Toiv Vayofek Ratzin Me'Hashem. The word Vayofek, meaning he gained favor from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is pekak, it plugs up his Averos. Now, we've noted that there are two psukim describing a woman. There is Motza Inias Isha Mar Mimaves and Matzah Isha Matzah Tov. So Motza is used for a bad wife, Matzah is used for a good wife. Mara says in Eretz Yisrael they would ask somebody who just got married, Matzah or Motza, did you get a good wife or a bad wife? Now, the Acharonim explained we weren't necessarily asking him what type of wife he had, but they were referring to the two possibilities as Matzah and Motza. Now, the Gemara says, what should he do if you do have a bad wife? So Rava says it's a mitzvah to divorce her. Like it says, Garish leitz v'yetzi modin v'yishboi zedin v'kolain. Divorce, the scoffer and strife will depart. Judgment and shame will stop. Now, the Gemara has a few statements about somebody who is stuck with a bad wife. He can't afford to divorce her because his ksuba that he was mechayev himself is too high. So the Gemara says, what should you do? So Rava says he should take a second wife, if he could, in those days, because that will cause her to better her ways. Competition always helps people improve. Like it says, B'chaverta v'lo b'silta, you should improve her with her chavra, with her friend, with her peer, meaning another wife, but not with a thorn, not by attacking her. That's not going to help. Now, Rava also said a bad woman is like a stormy day, like it says, Delef Tarid B'Yom Sagrir Ve'Eishis Midanim Nishtachave. An annoying drip on a rainy day when you're locked in the house is like a troublesome wife. Now, Rava says more, look how good a good wife is, look how bad a bad wife is. A good wife is Matzah Isha Matzah Tov, somebody who's found a wife has found goodness. That phrase could either be literally referring to a wife or could be referring to Torah itself. It's referring to literally a wife, so then it's saying Matzah Isha Matzah Tov. She is a definition of good herself. If it's referring to Torah, that's the best compliment in the world, that a woman is the mashal that Torah is compared to. At the same time, you have the opposite when it says Motzani Mar Mimavas Esa Isha. Again, that could literally be referring to a woman or to Gehenna. If it's referring to a woman, then it says straightforward that she's worse than death. If it's referring to Gehenna, how does that emphasizes the point that she is so bad that she herself is a mashal for Gehenna. Now, the Gemara says there is a pasuk that says, "Hineni mevi aleihem ra shel yuchlu latzis mimena." I bring an evil against them that they cannot escape. So, Rav Nachman said, "Name Rav Bar Avuah." That's a referral to a bad wife that you cannot get out from because Iksuba is too high. The Gemara says another pasuk showing that is Nasani Hashem bidei leuchal kum. Hashem put me in the hands of someone who I can't get out from under. And Marokva Barchia said that's referring to a bad wife with a high Iksuba. And in Eretz Yisrael, they said that's referring to someone who needs to buy his food with money. He doesn't have his own source of food, and you never know when the market is going to shoot up and inflation will cause him not to be able to afford to eat anymore. Now, the Gemara says further, another statement about a bad wife with a high ksuba. But first, the Gemara explains the pasuk that says, your sons and daughters will be given la'amacher to another people. The Gemara says this is you take a second wife to mother your children, a stepmother, and you can't defend them if she's nasty to them because you'll have to choose between your wife and your children. That's a bad position to be in. Now, it also says, Begoy novel achiseim, I will anger them with a novel, Begoy novel, with a horrible nation. So Gemara says this is referring to a bad wife with a high ksuba. It's referred to as a Begoy novel. Or it could be referring to the minim, the apikorsim, like it says, novel beliba yain alikim, that the novel said in his heart, Omar novel beliba yain alikim, the horrible one said there is no God, and therefore you see novel is referring to a heretic. Third explanation, it says that this pasuk is referring to the people of Barbaria and Martunai, the barbarians and the Mauritanians who walk in the street with no clothing. These people are as novel as could be before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's nothing more repulsive than walking around undressed. Fourth explanation is that this pasuk refers to the Chabarim. Chabarim were people that came to Bavel and instituted all kinds of decrees. They were of Persian descent. Gemara says that Rav Yochanan was told that the Chabarim came to Bavel, he keeled over in anguish, even though he lived in Eretz Yisrael. But they said to him, you can always bribe them, and then he straightened up a little bit. Then they said that they made 3 decrees, the Chabarim, the 3, and he said those 3 must be in response to 3 averos that the people of Bavel did. So the 3 decrees were, one, that they forbade shchita. The Gemara says that's because they didn't give the matnas kahuna of the meat, the chaz of a shok. The next thing they said is that they did not let them use the bathhouse, so he said that's in response to the fact that they didn't use the mikvah properly. And the third is they started to dig up the dead people. The Gemara said that's because the Jews there celebrate on the holidays of the Chabarim, shouldn't be doing that, and because they had celebration that they shouldn't do, they end up with mourning that they didn't need to do when their dead are pulled out of the ground. Now, the Gemara says that the uncovering of the dead is hinted to in the Psukim where it says, the hand of Hashem will be on you and on your fathers. Rabbi Shmuel says that's referring to pulling the dead out of the ground, because it's you and your fathers. And in the sin of the living, the dead are dug up. Now, Rabbi said to Rabbi Bar Mari, it says, Lo yasuv lo yikaveru l'dayman al pnei adam hayul. They will not be gathered together nor buried. They will be like excrement on the face of the earth. However, it also says but the dead are preferred to the living. So how could this be? If the dead are dug up and left strewn around, why would anybody prefer to be dead than to be alive? Where it says they don't want to be dead, but it's better for them to be dead, referring to Rishonim here. Better off that they should be dead than they should be racking up averas in their lives and end up falling into Gehenna. Alright, now the Gemara continues discussing bad wives and also talks about good wives, and now the Gemara is going to quote from the book of Ben Sira. Now, the Ben Sira was a book of Mishalim that was written in the Bayis Sheni, was not included in the Tanakh, but apparently there is some Kedusha and Chachma there. It's quoted by Chazal in a number of instances. Here it's quoted at length. So Ben Sira says, Isha Tova Matana Tova Libaleha B'chek Yirei Elokim Tina Sein, that a good woman is a gift she's given to the embrace of a God-fearing man, usually. But on the other hand, Isha Ra Taras Libala, a bad woman is like Taras to her husband. What should she do? Yigor Shena v'yashapi mitarati, you should divorce her and be cured of his Taras. It says further, Isha Yafa Ashrei Bala, a beautiful wife, beautiful of actions. Good is, and lucky is her husband, that Misbar Yamav Kiflayim, his days will be twice as long, twice as good as the others. Now, Matzir says further, Halei Menachem Eishes Chein, conceal your eyes from a charming woman, Penti Lucky B'Mitzidasa, lest you be ensnared in her net. Al Teid Eitzel Baila, don't drink wine and beer together with her husband, because you'll be spending time with her. Many men have been destroyed by the image of beautiful women. And numerous are her victims. And he says, many of the blows of the peddler, that's people who sell women's wares and end up being suspected of immorality and getting into trouble with their husbands. Somebody who engages in immoral behavior is like a spark that ignites coal. He burns very strongly. Or like a bird coop, that their feathers stick out and everybody knows what they're doing inside the house. Their houses are full of deceits. Now Ben Sira says further, don't be worried about tomorrow, you don't know what's going to end up. Maybe you're not even going to be alive to see tomorrow's trouble, and then you're going to end up being worried about problems that don't even belong to you. Then he says, don't let a lot of people come into your house, and don't bring everyone into your house, don't necessarily bring people into your house. Then he says, you should have many people who are your friends and ask about your welfare, but only reveal your secrets and your troubles to 1 out of 1,000. Now the Gemara goes back to the mitzvah of Pru Revu. The Gemara says, as we so quoted earlier, that Mashiach will not come until all the neshamos have been born. Like it says, Ki ruach milfana ya'ataf neshamos ani asisi. A spirit from before me shall be born, and the souls that I have made. Now the Gemara says a brisa that one is very important to engage in Pru Revu. Rabbi Elazar says anybody who doesn't do Pru Revu is like he is murdering. Like it says, Shofech damba ha'adam ba'adam dama yishafech. Right afterwards it says, Va'atem Pru Revu. So it talks about murder, and then the mitzvah of Pru Revu. Somebody who doesn't do Pru Revu, it's like murder. Rabbi Yaakov says somebody who doesn't do Pru Revu, it's like he diminishes the Shechina, the Tzelem Alekim, because it says, Ki Tzelem Alekim Lasas Adam, and afterwards it says, Va'atem Pru Revu. Ben Azai says both of them are true, because it does say both of them. Gemara says that they told Ben Azai, you are somebody who talks a lot and doesn't do what he preaches. Some people make good speeches and they do. Some people do and don't make good speeches. You just make good speeches, you don't do anything. Because Ben Azai was married briefly and then he got divorced and he never had his children. So Ben Azai said, what can I do? Nafshi chashka b'Torah, my soul craves Torah, somebody else will populate the world. Now the Gemara quotes another brisa similar to the one we said before about the significance of not doing Pru Revu, but this time we have different names. This time it's Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and Ben Azai is the same as before. Now the Gemara says a brisa. It says V'ducha Yomar Shu Hashem Rivavos Alfa Yisrael. When Klal Yisrael rested, when the Aron rested, Klal Yisrael would rest, and as if the Shechina rested upon them. So the Gemara says Rivavos Alfe Riva. So Rivava is 10,000 and Elef is 1,000 for a total of 11,000, but it says plural for both of them, so it's 22,000. So you see from here that the Shechina only rests when there are 22,000 Yisrael. So if there was 22,000 minus 1, and there's one person who hasn't done Puravu, he is the one who causes the Shechina to not rest on Yisrael. So you see, by not engaging in Puravu, he holds back the Shechina from resting on Yisrael, quite possibly. The Gemara says further, Abba Chanan said in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, that somebody who does not do Puravu is Chayiv Misa, like it says, Nadav Neviyu died, Ubanam Le'hoyulhem, they did not have any children, that indicate that that's related. Had they had children, they would not have been killed in the Mishkan. And there are other ones who say that someone who doesn't do Puravu causes the Shechina to depart from Yisrael. Like it says, I will be a God to you and your children after you. As long as you have children, the Shechina will be Shora upon you. But somebody who doesn't have children, who should the Shechina be Shora on? All you're left with are sticks and stones.